Welcome to the FNO InsureTech Podcast, a place where movers and shakers from all points within the insurance ecosystem gather and discuss all things InsureTech. Here are your hosts, Lee Boyd and Rob Beller.
Hey, podcast world. Welcome to another exciting edition of FNO InsureTech, starring a friend, a founder, somebody who had an exit, somebody who was a stand-up comic, all those things wrapped into one.
You don't hear that a lot.
You don't. We don't have a lot of former stand-up comics on our
No.
show.
Just to make sure it's not Jerry Seinfeld, right?
No,
Okay, I just want to make sure.
no, it's not, because we would have more than 3 listens if it was Jerry Seinfeld
Oh, well,
or download.
it is. It is
right?
what it is. It is.
Yeah, yeah.
But we got a great, not just a founder, an InsureTech founder who's going at it again.
And this is cool because usually we have somebody on, we interview them about their company, and then we
Yeah.
kind of watch and follow their company go. Well, that was the case with our guest today. We had him on. We watched him follow. Bada bing, bada boom. He sold the company,
Yeah.
a successful exit, and he could have rested on his laurels, but no.
No.
He said, let's get back into this thing.
He's back. He's back. He realized golf wasn't for him, and he's back starting again.
And so we thought it was an interesting kind of twist on all the different ways that we've approached InsureTech. What about the people who had one, sold it, and said, screw it, I'm getting back in.
I'm coming back.
I'm coming
With
back.
a different twist, right? Maybe not straight at InsureTech. He's
Not
doing another
exclusively.
thing, but it does have an insurance flair to it.
Application.
Application. Good word.
Thank you. We should stop the recording right here when I've just said a good word, as opposed to the words you're going to hear me say on the podcast, which aren't as good.
They're not, but no, they're great. You do a
Not
great
as-
job.
Not as clever.
Yeah.
Should we tell them who's here?
Well, you've built it up. You've built it up for about a minute and a half. I would love to know.
Ladies
our
and
guest?
gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, we have with us today Mr. Robert Bob Frady,
Bob Frady,
former CEO of Hazard Hub,
Yeah.
and now co-founder and CEO of
PropertyLens.
ta-da!
And we are going to get to learn all about what he's up to and his team, PropertyLens, how he's doing it a little different this time, how he's building the team, and then what it is. And just a little tidbit: it is a full-out health report on your home. And the coolest thing is it helps a new home buyer know what questions they need to ask when they're buying a home. And it lets the seller know these are the questions that you're probably going to get asked when you sell your house. And it's a detailed report, and we're going to let him talk all about it. But it's a great listen. And as always, Bob is just a delight and a friend of the podcast.
When Bob first told us about it, he called it, this was back then, he called it Carfax for your home.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of almost underplaying what it is. And it's fairly remarkable, and they've done a great job. Bob and his co-founder, they're data guys, and they've found a really interesting way to spin some data that's super beneficial.
Right.
And so we wanted to hear about that. We wanted to hear about what it's like being a two-timer. And coming
And
back
why
around.
he would do it.
What's the matter with you?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, let's
What's
do
the
it.
matter?
Let's jump in. Let's listen
Let's
to
do it. Let's do it. So without further ado, here is our interview with our friend Bob Frady, the co-founder and CEO of PropertyLens. Ladies and gentlemen, Bob Frady.
Nice.
Okay, so I got a joke for you. Let's start with the joke. So this guy, he's a developer. He calls his wife and says, "Hey, I'm going to the store. Can I pick anything up?" And she says, "Yeah, can you get a loaf of bread? And if they have eggs, get a dozen." And he came home with 12 loaves of bread. the developer joke. I can see you guys are developers.
I'm not sure I got that one.
He came home with 12 loaves of bread.
Okay.
Bread in
Well,
12 days.
well, we've done it before, so maybe we won't do it again.
That was a good time.
You know. Hey, everybody. We are here with, I think, a 3-timer
Yeah.
on our podcast, if I am not mistaken.
It's a free tea.
Boom, boom.
It's not
It's-
now.
That's right. In fact, we have the person on today who came up with the term three-peat, and is still in litigation with Pat Riley over it. Ladies and gentlemen, Bob Frady is with us again.
Welcome,
Bob.
Rob, Lee, it's a pleasure to be here.
Happy to have you back on. Welcome.
Thank you.
Honestly, one of our all-time favorite guests, which is saying a lot since we've had 7 guests on.
You're the top 7.
Welcome back. Where do you join us from today?
I'm in beautiful Edina, Minnesota, for 2 more weeks. And then in which case the place will freeze over in a layer of ice and I'll be back in California.
You even
Smart.
pronounce Minnesota properly.
You know, I've been working on the accent just a little bit because you gotta be kind of local when you're here. You know, my cousin's brother's uncle, you know, who knows everybody is wants to make sure you got the accent done right.
You got to be one of them.
So give us a good Minnesota.
Well, listen, you can't do 6 degrees of separation in Minnesota because everybody is separated by 2 degrees. Like, oh yeah, I know. I went to high school with his brother's cousin. You know, we're good friends. We go ice fishing. We're having a great time. So yeah, there's a lot of that. That's for sure.
It's
beautiful.
One of our longtime coworkers, John Przinski, is who's the president of one of our divisions at Alacrity, is lives in Brainerd.
Oh, sure.
Right?
Oh, for nice. It's a good place up there, Brainerd. That's Paul Bunyan land up there, I think.
Yeah. He every winter he sends me pictures of him ice fishing in his ice fishing tent.
It's ice drinking, really the actual title of it.
Yeah, that sounds right.
That's correct.
Yes.
That
sounds right.
Always in the picture in the back, there's a pile of current whiskey bottles and a pile of empty whiskey bottles. Always find their way.
It's the national wintertime sport of certain parts of Minnesota for sure.
Well, the last time you were here, which was whenever it was too long ago. The last time you were here to talk about the sale and acquisition of Hazard Hub.
Yep.
Yeah.
And your move with Hazard Hub over to Guidewire, and that was several years ago. And you're back today because you don't know when to leave well enough alone. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we, as part of the sale, we joined Guidewire, and Guidewire was a great company. But entrepreneurs like to break things and then fix things, or see something that's broken, try to fix it. And in big companies, that's not necessarily welcome. Like, oh yeah, you did it this way, you should have done it that way. And no one wants to hear that. So after a couple of years, I sat down with CEO Guidewire, and I'm like, roamers gotta roam. And so I left. So I left almost a year and a half ago. And I decided to try to retire. And first day I went to the golf shop, and then I went to the Best Buy, and then I'm sitting in the parking lot of the Best Buy. I'm like, I'm bored. So I've always had this. Yeah, I'm not done. It's like, I still feel vital enough, because I'm not as young as I used to be for sure, but I still feel vital enough to go out and take on a new challenge. And I've always had this idea, John, my co-founder, John, and I from Hazard Hub are together again. And this is an idea we've had for a long time. And we finally decided, let's make it happen. And here we go.
Man, so tell us today, what are you here talking about? What is this new thing?
So when I bought this place in Minnesota, there were several things that I knew based upon being able to look up data that a lot of people can't get. I knew that this place had elevated radon risk. I knew that it had ice dam risk, and I knew that it had flood risk. None of it was disclosed by the realtors. And listen, they're working hard. They're doing a fine job, but this is not the sort of thing that you think about when you're selling a house. And so I asked about the radon, and they ran a test. It came back elevated. I said, hey, you got to put a remediation system in before we buy the house, which they did.
Yeah.
And then also the roof had been replaced because of an ice dam. So when I bought the house, I knew I had to A, put more insulation in, and B, put some gutter guards on all the gutters. And then I thought, we've been talking about this, John, I've been talking about this forever. Why don't we just make a business out of it? Where we pull together as much data as we can possibly find that's relevant to a home buyer and give it to them in a report before they make an offer on the place.
Yeah.
So you don't fall in love with someone who's going to cost you a lot of money down the road. And you take those unexpected expenses and turn them into expected expenses. People are a lot calmer about the home buying process, for sure.
Man. So was this idea, your last idea was very insurance underwriting focused. This one
Yep.
is more real estate, it sounds like, more home buyer, realtors, home seller, things like that. Am I right?
Yep, exactly. It's more focused on the home buyer because let's be, I don't know last time you guys bought a house, but it's very tension inducing. You get all that price pressure. Am I getting the right deal? And that is its own thing. But the second part is what's hiding in here that it's going to bite me, 6 months, 12 months down the road. What kind of problems am I walking into that I might not know about? And that's where we want to focus. Because nobody pays attention to the buyer. Everybody's paid by the seller. Everything comes from the seller's commission, including the inspection. And so we want to arm the buyer with information to say, before I buy this property, before I put down my hard-earned money, I want to know the answer to these 20 or 30 questions to help me feel better about what I'm walking into.
So where did the name PropertyLens come from? Which, by the way, I think is a clever name.
It's, we think about it this way. You're putting a property under a microscope, and property microscope doesn't sound so hot. So we backed up a little generation and went with PropertyLens.
And the domain was available.
Yeah, the domain was available. Although property microscope has, I might go buy that one. It's always hard to find a company name. Like Google. What does Google do? It doesn't do anything related to. There's not.
But one of the
Google.
great names.
Yeah, it's just Google.
Yeah, because you have the time to build a brand, and so whenever you start a company, you have the quandary of, do I give it a name that nobody knows that I turn into a brand, or does sort of form follow function where I name it after something that hopefully people can attach themselves to. And that's the path that we did that with Hazard Hub. We did the same thing with PropertyLens. So, but it comes from put the property under the lens, under the microscope.
So is it fair to say Carfax for homes?
I never like to trample on another company's brand. So we do have a property timeline that is very similar to what you would see in a Carfax report. The difference is, in Carfax is wonderful.
Yeah.
It doesn't tell you what to do about those things. It just tells you what happened. Whereas in our report, we take all of the data, because people look at all this data and are like, this is very confusing. So we run it through a series of rules, some of which we've generated, some of which we generate by AI, and to say, here's the questions that you should ask to help address the issues that the data is showing. Right. And so that's the sauce that we add on top of, say, a traditional history report. What do you do about it?
That's an excellent point. I recently my car was in an accident, and I was in an accident. I was inside the car. Anyway, it cost almost $20,000 to repair. It was
Yeah.
ridiculous, right?
Yep.
But the question is, from a valuation standpoint, is it consequential? How consequential is it? What difference does it? Does it diminish the value of the vehicle? All kinds of questions around that. It's
Yep.
not just that. It's interesting, of course, as a first step that it occurred or that something happened.
Yep.
But like you're saying, the more important question is, does it matter? Is it
Yeah.
going to affect me as a buyer?
That's a question that is already kind of shown in the car world. Whether that will hold true in the property world is kind of part of our big adventure. We think so. But what we know is that about 20%, roughly 20% of homeowners end up worse off financially a year later
Wow.
after they buy their house because of unexpected expenses.
Wow.
And that's the kind of help that we're trying to give to people, is to say, here's the things that may come to bite you. Make sure you ask about how well the property's been maintained so you don't end up in a worse financial position.
Well,
A little bit later.
so Bob sent us over a report to look at. Right before this, I had opened it up here at the beginning when he was telling us the joke, and my jaw dropped to the floor when I saw it was a 25-page report.
Yeah.
It was not a little. I had expected like a 2-page report. I don't know
Yep.
what I was expecting, but that's what I was expecting. And the information that you have in this report is blowing my mind. And we're going back to what you just talked about, was that you're helping give the buyer the questions they need to ask. For example, we didn't detect solar panels on the house. Maybe you should think about that or ask this question. You could possibly save a little or maybe not. Or we found the square footage to be different on 2 sites. Was there an add-on? Was there a permit done? Is that something that you should worry about? And that's just almost a minor finding, right? You're finding information that homeowners don't even kind of think that they need to be finding. And I am blown away by this report, to be honest with you, Bob. I wish that not only had I had this, but that I had the questions to ask whenever I was buying my home 15 years ago.
Yeah, it's thank you, first of all. That's the challenge that we're trying to solve for, is people don't know what to ask. They don't know what they don't know. And like your insurance agents, they're going to talk about risk. They're going to talk about price. And no disrespect to insurance agents, but the next time my agent talks to me about risk will be the first time. And I live right next to a creek. You can see it on the report. And it's okay. It is the way it is. They're going to protect themselves. You got to look out for yourself. Be an informed buyer. That's what we're here for.
Wow.
Do you have flood data on the report?
Yep. We publish the flood zones, if there is one within a reasonable distance of the property. If your nearest flood zone is 3 miles away, you're not going to see it. You're just going to see that it's not in the flood zone. But we'll also give you an idea of your risk of catastrophic flood. So, like, for example, my house is not in a flood zone because the front door is 12 feet over the creek that's right next to my house. But the back door is 3 feet away, or 6 feet away, and 3 feet above the creek. So my risk is from backdoor flood, which is not covered under a flood policy. It doesn't come over the front, so that's not covered. So I got to do things like build a retaining wall to keep some of that flood water out. And I know I have to, and I didn't do it yet, but I know I have to. It's on the plan for next year. So yeah, we visualize the flood zone. And listen, you can say what you want about being the flood zones. It's what we have so far, and you can make a lot of projections about what might or might not happen, but they're educated guesses. You're using the published data to say, here's the nearest flood zone. Here's the 500 year. We publish both 100 and 500 year flood zones. And here's how far away you are from it. So yeah, that's one of the items that we publish in there.
And so you're a data guy, right? I mean,
Oh
you
yeah.
know how to find data, you know how to package it up and how to
Mhm.
do that. Is that what you're doing here? I assume you're pulling data
Yep.
from multiple sources
Mhm.
and bringing it all together. Tell me a little about that. How do you even start? How do you even start doing something like that?
And if you could also address with that, has it been surprising the amount of data available?
Okay.
Because I
So,
didn't think you could find a lot of this data. I would have had no idea where to find it.
well, that's part of the pleasure of being in InsureTech is we not only have built a lot of this data before, but we have a lot of friends in the industry who sell data like this to insurance companies that consumers can't buy. Like a consumer can't buy a satellite roof report. So we provide it as part of our our report because we're an outlet for insurtechs to help to monetize their own data that's otherwise just sitting there. So there's that sort of thing. Like, how do you harness the sources that are already out there? And then the second part is for the stuff that's missing, how do you build it? Like, we have about 3.4 million damaged properties in our data set that are damaged from floods or wildfires or hurricanes or tornadoes. Um, I think those are the four main categories. So that's published locally by GIS departments, by states. We petition the state for damage reports, and we actually compile that data ourselves. And it really comes down to listening to people and saying, what bugged you about the house that you bought?
Mhm.
Like, for example, there's a train that runs by my house at 1 a.m., between 1 and 3 a.m., 3 times a week and blows its horn every time.
Yeah.
And it's like it reminds me of that My Cousin Vinny, where the train rolls through town. Like, I bought a My Cousin Vinny house. I had no clue. So one was that it's like that bugs me and that bugs people. And so we went out and got a data set, and it's not in the report yet. It'll be in the next generation of the report that has train tracks and noise levels associated with those trains. Same thing with streets. Same thing. Anything that you would want to know. We're home buyers too. We're curious about this. And one of the things I like is, yeah, there's a lot of data that's available. I'm not quite surprised by how much there is available because there's a lot of pieces that are available.
Yeah.
Like, but putting them together, like permits, for example, there's a couple of different places you can get permits. Nobody has the correct answer, so we multi-source it. But then permits are nasty kind of sometimes to understand what they mean. So we have to clean those through an AI algorithm that we use to help make it look presentable, and then match that to some of the MLS data. So you can say, all right, they say it's renovated, but there's no permits. Was it permitted work? Will it pass inspection? Things like that. So I'm so Lee, for your question,
Yeah.
we're just intensely curious about what people are experiencing in buying a house. And Rob, I'm surprised in some ways and I'm disappointed in other ways. I'm exceptionally disappointed in the insurance industry because access to claims data is so hard to get. And it's people guard it like it's Fort Knox.
Mhm.
And my appeal to the insurance companies is, hey, wouldn't you want the new owner to know that there were issues so they make sure that it's corrected? So loss control starts before they buy the house. But it's a different way of looking at things, and we're working on ways.
Well, wouldn't
We're
the
not.
insurance company want you to know that maybe they paid a claim on that roof last year?
Mhm.
Doesn't the homeowner probably that's a great piece of information a homeowner's gonna wanna know.
Yep.
They might be told, "Oh, there's hail damage," but your report might say that a claim was paid last year,
Mhm.
and then you negotiate before the sale and say, "Well, seller, you gotta pay. You were paid for it."
Yeah. For example, if you had your roof repaired, who did it? And was the work warranted? And get a copy of the roof warranty. Because what
Mhm.
happens so many times, especially in places here like Minnesota where we have a lot of hail, is the hail event comes and they immediately call the insurance company, even though the roof is warranted. Like, do the roof warranty first, then call the insurance company. Save yourself the money and save yourself the trouble. But that's a process that is, where we are today and where we'll be in 5 years are probably two different places.
Yeah.
But you can wait to have the perfect answer. But as you see in the report, it gives you a ton of information that you can't get easily otherwise.
So go to market, is your primary customer the home buyer
Yes.
or realtors?
This is
I think this could scare realtors. I think it could scare realtors.
Sure.
Yeah, you should go to our Facebook page and see some of the comments that we get from both realtors and inspectors. And it's not, listen, they're not the enemy.
No.
It's if you take a realtor plus a PropertyLens report, it's better than either one of them by themselves.
Yeah.
Or an inspector plus a PropertyLens report. It's better than by itself. But I'm old enough to know when Carfax first came out. And what we knew is that car dealers didn't want it because all it did was mess with the price of the house. So they went to the consumer. Now, it's expensive to do it that way. It's harder to do it that way.
Sure.
But they're the ones holding all the risk. God bless the realtors, but they're in and they're out. The transaction's done. See you later. Because that's their job. Their job is to get the transaction done. It's not to make sure that you have a happy home buying experience, to get the transaction done. And nobody's looking out for the person holding the mortgage. And that's where we want to focus. So what we also know from Carfax is that once people start asking for it or looking for it, then the industry does a good job of responding to it and saying, okay, now we're going to provide these as part of the listing or as part of the home buying process.
Absolutely.
So that's the long-term goal.
There's a huge Fox set up at our Ford dealership here. Like, they've embraced it. They are going to give it to, and now they have a subscription to me on every car that I bought from Ford. Every month I get my Carfax report to help me and to keep me up to date and to know what's going on. Yeah. It's because they went to the consumers. The consumers demanded the product ultimately. And now the dealerships have had to buy in. And I could absolutely see this same thing. I could see mortgage companies saying, yeah, I would sure like a PropertyLens report before I give you before I give you a loan on this thing.
Yep. Yeah. Listen, we're not going to say no to those companies, but when you have a limited marketing budget, you have only so many places you could aim at a certain time. And so the intentionality of our marketing is at the person buying the house. And then we'll expand as we get that level of success, then that will allow us to expand out.
It's interesting. I'm thinking of Waco, Texas, where Lee lives. And I have a friend, many friends who live there. One friend in particular, his home is under the flight path of a private executive airport, right? Private planes. And if no plane flew over your house, you know who I'm thinking of, Lee.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You have no idea that
you wouldn't
unbelievably loud.
Because it's not even easily seen, the airport. It's kind of behind trees and whatnot. It's a little hidden. So if you're a realtor, you could be taking somebody there and you're thinking to yourself, I hope the plane doesn't come in for a landing.
Same with the train. We're not going to go at 5 p.m. because the train comes every day.
We work really diligently to try to pull together the best data that we can for those. And, for all the GIS heads out there, some's vector, some's raster, getting in to search them correctly is always a challenge, but that's the challenge we take on, listen, this house, if you look at all the things in that report, some people might go, I don't want to buy it. But we looked at it and said, despite all this, even knowing all this, knowing that you have a club foot, I still like it and I'm still going to buy it. And we did, because you go in knowing, and that to me is more comfortable than not knowing.
Yeah. It's a little bit like I'll say this, like your wife, in that when you drive home with the brand new car that you forgot to mention that you're buying, your wife might have one reaction. But if she went with you, or her husband, or husband for that matter, if they went with you, spouse, to buy it, it's in a whole different experience. So knowing
Oh yeah.
is super powerful.
Yes.
Right?
But anytime you try to do something new
Mm-hmm.
and reach a market that isn't used to seeing it, it's a challenge. And it's tough. It's just, there's a reason. And there have been companies that have tried to do this and focused on the realtor and they fail because the consumer doesn't know,
Yeah.
we want the consumer to be empowered. You're buying the house, you're paying the mortgage, you live there. The circus is left hand and you're the one there to clean up.
And I wanted to ask you about that. One of the things that we want to talk with you for a few minutes about are, some of the lessons that you've learned from your entrepreneurial experience that you've had over the past many years. And you were a B2B company, Hazard Hub B2B company, strictly.
Yep.
And now you're in a whole different pool. Tell us what's that like, and how did what you did at Hazard Hub in this regard, in the marketing? I mean, I find it incredibly intimidating to think about going after one at a time buyers.
Yep.
At scale.
What's interesting is that before I was a B2B marketer, I was a B2C marketer. I ran direct marketing for IndyMac Bank, which was loan origination. Sorry, America. I ran direct marketing for Live Nation. I built their email marketing program. We went from 300.
Wait, for Live Nation?
For Live Nation, yeah. It's the coolest job. It's a cool job. I got to work cool clothes.
That's pretty awesome.
And we went from 300 campaigns a year to 15,000 campaigns a year, using technology to leverage the shows that generated like $260 million a year in revenue. I was a global outbound director for Expedia for a short time. Seattle's not my favorite place, so I'm glad it was a short time. But I was completely B2C. So when we flipped over to Hazard Hub being B2B, that was new shoes for me. But what I've learned is that every market has a medium. And in the three words, the three letters that mean the most in marketing are called RFM, recency, frequency, and amount. Arthur Smith. So frequency is where you win the game. You find the channel where your customers are and you frequently post in there. Like back in the Hazard Hub day, you'd see a post almost every day, talking about this disaster and that disaster, or this hydrant or that hydrant, and it has to be focused on the user. Can't be just focused on you. So find the channel where your customers live and frequency.
I think that's a fantastic idea.
Well, tell us. No one ever says, let's run one less TV ad.
Right.
It's a given in the traditional media market, but it's not as well understood, I think, in some ways in the digital market.
So where would you be hitting the consumer with this one? Is it
right here?
It's all on all social media, all everything.
Yeah. Stop the scroll is what we try to do. People constantly scroll, and we just want them to stop. Take a look. Yeah, and it's hard. It's hard. It's not for the faint of heart. The other thing I've learned from being an entrepreneur is that if there's a wall, you want to know what it's like to be an entrepreneur. Find a wall, bang your head into it for like 6 hours a day, and then tell yourself you're still a good person. It's like you forget all that. Like when you get to a certain level of success, you forget all the stuff that it took to get you there. And my wife was like, really? We got to do this again?
We're doing one more time? One more time?
Again. And
I think you have a great idea here. I think it's, at first when I heard about it, I'm like, well, there's Zillow, right? There's Zillow out there. And there is. Zillow's great. It'll give me good information. But first and foremost, the first thing, actually, like on that first page, key findings and questions to ask. You're helping us know what we should ask because most people don't even know. I'm in the insurance space and I see it all the time, but you show up to a new house, you're giddy. You're excited. You're like, oh, there's a backyard and a zip line for the kids. We'll take it. And you don't even ask, how much is the insurance? How much could it be? Right? Was there a storm?
Yep.
Is there a storm? How often is there a storm? All those things.
Yeah. One of the things I learned in this house is it's hard. There's competitive houses and there's non-competitive houses. Competitive houses, 2,000 square feet in an area that doesn't get tremendous variability in weather. Very competitive. You'll have multiple carriers trying to get your insurance. You go over a certain size, you go over a certain value, you go over a certain age, you go in certain areas, and all of a sudden that competitiveness just kind of drops through the floor, and usually your price goes up as well. For
Right.
folks in California, many places have to insure through the FAIR plan because of wildfire concerns, which is its own host of concerns. And so one of the questions we ask is, if you're in a high wildfire zone and you're in California, is this property insured by the California FAIR plan?
Yeah.
Because it's different coverage. And because you'll ask the realtor, can I get insurance on this festival? Well, you can. It's just expensive. It's like, come on, don't do that. Let's try to be as open as we can, because that insurance, my insurance cost has gone up 70% in 2 years here in Minnesota. It's just crazy. But that's why you want to do loss control on your own. You don't want to have a claim.
And is that the play in insurance? Is that, we saw you at ITC, you're a staple there. Is that the play, is to try to get this information in the hands maybe of an insurance company to help somebody mitigate a loss before it happens? Is there an insurance play? What are you looking at there?
The insurance play for us is, we want to let the data loose. We want to put the data in the hands of people who can do the most about it, which is the homeowner, in a way that the industry is just not doing right now. So we're looking for partners, whether it's inspections or whether it's claims or whether it's anything that could help understand what's going on in the house. The second thing that we offer is, we offer an estimate of how much insurance should cost. And then we offer a button that say, if you want a competitive quote, click here.
I saw that. I like that.
Yeah. We kick it out to one of our partners, and we can send a fully parameterized URL. So all the data that we have, we can just send it right to the insurance company. Now, long-term, we have enough data to underwrite the vast majority of the policy. We should be able to tell you with a high degree of confidence how much it will cost to insure this house through a number of different carriers. We're not there yet, but long-term, we should be. Doesn't mean we'll set up an agency.
I'm about to say, I see an MGA in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. Long-term, that kind of synergy exists.
Are you live?
Yes. Yeah. You can go on to PropertyLens.com, enter in any address in the continental US, and get a report. $99 for one.
That was my question.
Yep. $99 for one, $199 for three, or $299 for five.
I mean, it's a very reasonable price for the amount of information that you're getting and just the insight. I didn't know how much it was, and I think that's a very reasonable price.
Yeah, it's always a challenge. Pricing's always a challenge. And we think that there's a lot of value in that. And the reason why we discount multiple reports, there's two reasons. Number one is, if you're a realtor, you should buy five, because chances are you'll have 5 listings during the year and you can use the credits throughout the year.
Yeah.
But if you're a shopper, you might look at 4 or 5 houses and then say, well, it's between these 3 or between these 2. Which one should I pick?
Yeah.
And run them on both and see what the issues are, ask the questions, and then make the final offer. That's where ultimately we think the most value is when the shopper uses this as part of their decision making.
How long does it take for you to create a report?
It takes about anywhere between 60 and 90 seconds to generate a report.
Oh, I thought it might be a day.
No.
So
No.
so you have your hands within the data somewhere and you're putting it all together very, very quickly.
It is the land of 1,000 connectors. So
You're like the king of APIs.
Yeah, it's API, even we even API our own data. So, which is from a data architecture standpoint, is kind of cool. But yeah, we wanted it. We can't do it instantaneously because there's so many sources that we're going to. Plus, the value of it, if you did it instantly, people might be suspicious of it. But we don't slow it down either. It takes, and you'll get a little wait thing that says, hey, you can wait here, or we'll shoot you an email when it's done.
Generating.
Yeah. And so there's a lot. I mean, you're looking at satellites, you're looking at real estate data, you're looking at energy costs, you're looking at solar, you're looking at permits, you're looking at flood zones, you're looking at assembling it all. It's a lift.
Is there a basic price?
99 for one is the
That's
basic
the one.
price.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it just one price, or are there levels of more
detailed reports?
information?
Yeah, we thought about that, because you see a lot of times you get this plus this plus this, and pricing is complex enough without introducing another layer to it. It's like we're super. Even if your house is $200,000, this report will give you information that you can't get anywhere else as quickly as you can get it through us, if you can get it at all, and still might save you a few $100s because of something that you've discovered. So, you could always be flexible in the future, but for now we're pretty, we surveyed 25,000 people, and half of them said they would pay nothing, and half of them said they would pay more than $150. And so we kind of split the difference and said 99.
In a heartbeat. I'm buying a house. I'm buying one of these reports. So Bob, out of all the information on this report, and this might be a tough one, what do you think is the most valuable information that you're providing to a new homeowner? Is it, and I won't even give you an example, what do you think? What do you think?
Well, I think categorically, it's the questions. The questions are the most valuable thing, because that's what you don't know, is you don't know what to ask. So we give you the questions to ask. If I were to think about it, because really different areas have different things, like, some areas, like we have permits on 90% of the US, but some places don't require that you have a permit. So that's where the questions come in. Like, work was done, there's no permits, was it permitted, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you're near a flood zone, it's a lot more important to you than if you're not. But I think the most valuable part, the questions are number one, but number two is properties that have been prior damaged in a catastrophe. Whether it's a wildfire, hail, tornado, wind, those are super valuable because a lot of times those aren't disclosed. Like the Marshall fire outside of Denver, they're rebuilding right on those same spots. So we'll flag a house to say this house was prior destroyed in the Marshall fire. Can you even get insurance for this house? That's the key finding for that. And to know that, hey, there's some wildfire risk, even though it's relatively low risk, something unusual happened there. So I think the questions are number one. And then the catastrophe data is number two. And then I think the permit data is probably number three, because the permit data tells you who did the work. Like, a lot of times you buy a house and the work's been done, you have no idea who did it. We'll give you the name of the company that pulled the permit, so you can call them and say, hey, listen, I had some work done. There was some work done here before. Can you come in and take a look and make sure everything's all hunky-dory?
Which a great example of that would be like a house leveling company. Some house leveling company in Texas, we get up and down movement all the time. And some house warranty companies, the warranty stays with the home. It's not just with the owner, but you might not disclose that. You might not remember it. You might not know. I think about my in-laws, they had it done. It stays with the home. But if you're able to pull that information, that's valuable information that a homeowner would have no idea to even ask, and let alone find.
You wouldn't believe how long it took me to figure out who handled the recycling for this area. Like, it's just one of the things you never think about. And in future versions, we'll have a portal where the homeowner can put all that stuff in. Like, who's your electric company, who does the cable, all that stuff. But we're not there yet. But that's what we're working on down the road. Is to know who's done the work so you can recontact them in case something happens with the work.
And I can only imagine, I'm just brainstorming, that if you allow for homeowners to give data, right, to give data, you'll be able to give more average data on reports, right? Oh, average cable company, average whatever. These are big cable companies to use, or even that, right? You buy a new home. I don't know who my cable. Can I have this company or that company? Your report could get to the point where it's like, these are the 3 internet sites, and this is your average speed. Like, the sky's the limit, and it's just very exciting. You actually really pumped me up about this. I think this is such a cool tool. Whenever I first heard about it, I was like, well, that's not going to work. Where's Bob going to get all this data? But you've blown me away that you were able to work your magic.
Well, thank you. It's that collecting and gathering and but presenting data is an art form. And that's the art form in which I've lived in the last, dozen years. So it's fun to do it. And for me, the fun part is giving it to someone and having them go, oh, I didn't know that. Now I know this about the place. Listen, it's starting something new is always challenging.
Yeah.
And we're very determined to be successful. But at the same time, people gotta buy it. They gotta be aware of it. So that's why we're here.
One last question. So you founded a data company in the world where the word API or acronym API was pretty new, right? It wasn't new to tech people, but to like me, I remember having to look up what API was. And now you're founding another company where most people know they know data, they know connections. Is it easier to start a company? Are companies putting data out there in more relevant locations that you can pull it from? Or is it still a difficult thing? Is it an easier move for you now? Or is it still about the same?
I would say that in some ways it's much easier. I tell people all the time that if you want to start a business, this is the best time to be alive ever because of APIs and because of interoperability among data sources and because, everything has, GitHub has changed the world.
Yeah.
It's a great time to start a business that relies on data. Now the problem is that not all the data exists in API portals, or it exists in this API portal, plus that one, plus that one, plus that one, plus 6,000 more just like them. Then you got to pull them all together. That's the tricky part. So I would say that it's easier in many ways, but it's also more complex because people don't design their API with other APIs in mind. They just say, here's what we want to do, and here's how it works. So you have to be able to read a lot of different languages and integrate those things. So it's a little bit of both. I would say it's definitely both.
Well, you've energized me, and I'm excited about it. And my wife would buy another house tomorrow if we would, but I don't plan on buying it anytime soon. But I might order one of these on my house just for the fun, just to see what I don't know.
Tell your friends if they're looking for a house. For anyone who's listening, if you're not buying a house, tell your friends who are, hey, listen, I've heard about this PropertyLens thing, and they have an extremely handsome CEO, and he would do us wrong.
He'll give you good data, good data. I'm going to pass that along. I'm going to see a realtor tomorrow, and I'm going to say, if you don't know about this, you got to use it.
Yeah. Rob did have one more question.
Yeah.
It was, having started, this is now my third business.
Yes.
What have I learned across those businesses?
Oh, yeah.
And the answer is to hire good people, to have a good team. One of the difficulties I had with Hazard Hub is I was so in the weeds on everything that when it came time to, change when we sold the company, I couldn't extract myself because I was so intertwined with everything. So this time I'm really working on hiring really great people who, when the time comes, can take much more responsibility. So I don't have to do everything. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs make the mistake of trying to do everything themselves, which is the worst possible of all outcomes. Now, some people are brilliant and they can handle it. And I still like being involved in everything. but I'm conscious this time of making sure the team is ready to step up in case, get hit by a bus or something like that, which I'm not looking to do, but
No, at no point. But that is probably one of the best lessons that I've heard. I mean, you hear from leaders who say hire good people, and
Yep.
I think that's a great lesson. I'm glad you shared that with us today.
And the goodness of the person counts for us as well. You can hire real talented jerks and
Yeah.
maybe it's worth it. But for the most part, I want to hire good people who do good work. And they're there. They're there. You just got to find them. They're there.
You've hire the good people you want to be around.
Yep, exactly.
Well, good deal, Bob. We appreciate you, and I'm sure we'll talk to you again.
Sounds good, Lee. It's good to see you.
You too. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You know what's interesting about Bob?
No,
is
please
that,
tell.
He combines like all this knowledge with this big personality that he has, right?
What a great personality.
Makes him very interesting.
He is. He is a very interesting person. I love the way his brain thinks. I can just picture him sitting around saying, what do people need that they don't even know that they need it? And he comes up with at least these two, right? Really cool things that he's done. And PropertyLens is no different. It's a really neat product. It's a really neat product.
Yes. I know you're excited about it.
I'm very excited about it. I've actually told quite a few people about it who are buying houses. And I say, you've got to go out and try this. You've got to go out and try it.
I mean, it's kind of surprising to me that it didn't exist.
Yeah, I think people were satisfied with the Zillow of the world, right?
There.
Here's your property tax, here's here. And a lot of people don't think, and it wasn't until we did another interview with another person where it dawned on me, like, people don't know that they're buying houses in a fire area. You might look around and think there's no wildfire here, but it's in there. And people don't even think about it. It's like when I bought my car, I didn't even think about the insurance was going to go up.
Right.
People need to know what to ask. And that's the best part of PropertyLens, the questions that the home buyer can ask.
Right. That aren't answered elsewhere or in one single place. So,
yeah. I'm excited to see where it goes. Good for Bob and team.
And we thank Bob, and we thank him for his joke, and we thank all you.
I still don't get it, but I thank him for it.
Yeah, me neither. We thank you all for listening, and until next time.
Goodbye, everybody.